Well, good morning, everyone. We are back for NFL Fantasy Matchup. Week 12 is in the books. We're going to look ahead to Week 13. But with that said, today, I bet you for today's show, we're going to talk a lot about injuries, trade deadlines, but mostly injuries to some key players. As usual, Jimmy over in Scottsdale or in Phoenix, over in Payson, Arizona. Jed over in the suburb of Illinois. Welcome, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Jed, you know what? I know we were just talking about this. You've lost 5 straight. Metcalf has not been doing well. Dalvin Cook now is out with the shoulder separation, probably about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. You now also have what do you call it?
Derrick Henry is on IR.
Yeah.
I lost Derrick Henry, I lost Kyler Murray, and I lost Dalvin Cook.
Yes. But Jed, it has, I would probably say after weeks and weeks of waiting, Week 12, I finally got Antonio Gibson, who is on every single one of my teams. Yesterday, got 29 carries, 111 yards. And then from that point on, he had 7 catches for 35 yards. The problem is no touchdowns.
Yeah, McKissick stole both those touchdowns, if you saw. I mean, you can't do anything about touchdowns. So in fantasy, you can try to predict the yardage and the carries, but you cannot predict touchdowns. So all you can do is just keep waiting. But he had a nice game. That was a nice game for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and then McKissick got carted off. So I think that you, at least from that perspective, know that maybe they'll continue to use Gibson as the number 1 lead back and goal line. But Logan Thomas comes back as well too. So maybe they might use him as well too.
Man, Logan Thomas had 3 catches, 31 yards. I was very disappointed in McLaren. McLaren only had 4 catches, 51 yards, and I needed McLaren to do well. I actually lost by a team, another team I think our Walter White League by 6 points, and McLaren was playing. I really needed McLaren to do well.
Yeah, that's the worst when you have one guy and you're just waiting. It doesn't work out. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, this is, like we said, this is week 13, so a lot of playoffs start in week 14. Some start week 15. So you know, if you're still right on the edge there, you got to take a shot to try to get in. So what I mean by that is when you're looking at your players, you don't want to put in the safe. You know, there are some players you could get 7, 8, 9 points, but that's really the cap. But you want to go for the players who maybe you could hit it and they get a couple touchdowns, like a McKissick, and then all of a sudden you get 20 points. So you got to take a chance to get in.
Hey, but the one concern, especially with these injuries, we're just talking about death as well too, and concerns with these superstars come back. Christian McCaffrey's out. It looks like he's probably going to be out for the season. Dalvin Cook, shoulder separation. Deebo Samuel went out. He'll probably be out, groin injury. He may be out 1-2 weeks. That means he's probably going to come back in week 15 as well, too. But that's for many the start of the playoffs. So now you have a guy coming in from injury at the start of the playoffs. Just not a very good sign.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to take them a while to get kind of acclimated. The other thing I'll say, though, is all these injuries, if you are chasing the playoffs, there is the benefit in that the waiver wire pool is a lot stronger if you're paying attention to the news. Like if you're just kind of a sideline, player and you're really not checking things, you're not going to catch, who are the backups that are coming in. Like we talked about last week, Matt Breida, coming in and others who step in up. Most people are not going to know those names. And so you have an opportunity to get some really good waiver pickups to help your team.
I think the other thing to note with playoffs starting too, I think these are also the times where certain players like a Cortland Sutton, I mean, look, he has not produced in the last 4 games, and you almost have to say, I can't wait any longer. I need to play somebody else who's out there in the waiver wire, because a lot of these players who you think will come on maybe later in the season, it's time to move on from them.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and it's a hard choice. So I have Kyle Pitts and Dalton Schultz. Team, and I've been waiting on Pitts every single game, and I keep losing out points because Schultz has been producing, and so that's exactly right. Like I'm probably going to have to play a Schultz maybe over a Pitts. I mean, it's a tough decision, but you need the points.
Yeah. Or you also look at Rashad Bateman. You look at Elijah Moore. Hey, speaking of Elijah Moore, Jed, I was regretting my decision to trade Jimmy. He really, really wanted Elijah Moore. So I actually ended up getting Alexander Madison, Then I also got Jamal Williams,
No,
Javante Williams,
you got Javante Williams and then Ramondre Stevenson.
and
So, yeah.
Ramondre Stevenson, all for Elijah Moore.
Yeah, that's going to be fine either way. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson has been doing well up in New England. So, I mean, yeah, with Swift going out, with, I mean, obviously, yeah, Moore has been really not a great pickup. But still, there's so much out there right now. You can pick up a lot of backs who are going to produce.
Oh no, Jed, you probably missed it. Not only did I get Ramondre Stevenson, I got Alexander Madison, and I got Javante Williams.
Okay, yeah, with Cook going out. I mean, Madison is a stud. Madison is like we said, he's the number one replacement, more than like Chuba Hubbard, more than maybe AJ Dillon is the other one who's closest. But Madison can pick up exactly where Dalvin Cook was. So you can expect, 15, 20, 25 points out of the guy. He has that kind of talent.
Well, funny enough, I think the last 2 or 3 games that Madison starting in place of Dalvin Cook, he's averaged close to 24 fantasy points. And so honestly, like, you're not losing anything by bringing in Madison, similar to AJ Dillon. You're not losing him. Now, actually, this past week, I think I remember what you were saying. You were going to start both AJ Dillon as well as also Aaron Jones. And Dillon actually had a pretty good game. He had a touchdown this past week for Green Bay. And actually had a pretty decent fantasy game.
Yeah, he looked better than Jones, actually. Jones, I thought, still looked like he was a little bit slow, still hampered by injury. So I think Dillon is, even with both of them, he may still be the better play going forward. The other guy that did well for me was Cordero Patterson, came back from injury. Yeah. Man, he looked really good.
Yeah.
He had 2 touchdowns. So
yeah, he's taking so many plays. I mean, even Kyle Pitts, right? Like, Kyle Pitts, you would think would be the guy that they would potentially look at because there's no other receivers. But Cordell Patterson's the person they're looking all the time in the red zone, whether it's running the ball or receiving the ball. That's who they're looking for right now.
Chad, let me ask you a quick question. You picked up Russell Wilson from the waivers. He's gotten back in the last couple weeks. He's been okay. 247 yards, 2 touchdowns. The problem is the receivers have not been doing well. Look at Lockett, 3 catches, 96 yards, but even DK Metcalf, 1 catch, 13 yards. You're still starting Russell Wilson here for the foreseeable future as your quarterback, right?
No, actually, I didn't. In that league, I started him the first game he came back, and then I didn't start him last week. I started Joe Burrow over him because if you watch the games, even though he had over 200 yards, the guy is off. He's missing receivers. That's why DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett have been not getting their points. I mean, he's basically, his best play was the check down to the tight end. And so it means that his accuracy beyond 5-10 yards is just not there. So he's not totally back from injury. So I essentially would wait. I'm waiting to see if he can have a blow-up game where he shows that he's back, but it's hard to start him right now.
I mean, think about it, right? He's got a screw in the finger of his throwing arm. And so even what all of the athletic trainers are saying when I was reading about it is it's going to take him at least most of the season to get used to it, because when you have a screw, especially in that middle finger, it's hard to throw. I mean, you're adjusting the throw. And even with the play to Lockett had 90-something yards, I think almost half of that came in one throw. And so really, I mean, if you take that throw away, his receivers didn't do really well at all.
Yeah. A couple of things. Christian McCaffrey is out, probably injured reserve, ruling him out for the remainder of the season. Jim, is Chuba Hubbard a player that you're looking at? He just did not do well when Christian McCaffrey was out. Cam Newton was terrible this week as well, too. And I saw that you dropped Cam Newton.
Well, I took a chance. So what do you call it? Kyler Murray was not playing. So I was like, I'll take a chance on Cam Newton, right? I was so peeved watching this Carolina game. Not only did Christian McCaffrey, who I have in 2 leagues, go out injured, but Cam Newton didn't do anything. He started the game pretty well. He had a 60-yard pass to DJ Moore. Then he ran in for a touchdown, but that was it. Like for the rest of the game. And they actually benched him towards the end of, I think, the fourth quarter. So I don't know. I mean, I can see them going back to Sam Darnold, to be honest. Look, I think if you need a running back who's going to get you around 10 points, you go Hubbard. But I do think there's a couple. I mean, we could talk more about this later. There's a couple of running backs you might want to look at out there who might be better.
Yeah. Jed Debo Samuel, man, he was awesome this past week, but he went out with a groin injury. One of the things that he says is that he actually wanted to avoid serious injury, so he took himself out when he felt that little feeling within his groin, and it looks like he's probably going to miss 1 to 2 weeks. What's your outlook for Debo Samuel in time for the playoffs, but also Brandon Ayuk as well too, or George Kittles?
Yeah, I was going to say Ayuk and Kittles is who you want to pick up and expect to get the carries off of that. But I definitely am not dropping a Debo Samuel. If someone drops him, well, particularly again, depending on your position, if you are headed towards the playoffs, Debo Samuel is a guy that if someone drops him, or you can stash him on your bench and wait, and then pull him out come week 15, week 16 for the playoffs. I mean, he's a monster. So that's a guy that I would want to have on my roster, and I wouldn't be willing to drop him.
Yeah. I mean, before his groin injury, Jed, he had 66 yards running, 2 touchdowns. But at the same time, look at Elijah Mitchell. He had 27 carries, 133 yards, 1 touch. He definitely is a must start this week.
Yeah, no, Mitchell is proven. And again, we've talked about this all year. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers run game, you can just bank on it. You know, if you can get a running back there who stays healthy, who doesn't get injured, you can bank on the points coming out of there.
Who was it? ESPN was saying that their argument is Elijah Mitchell is the best free agent pickup for fantasy this year. I don't know if you guys agree to that or not.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, he definitely was not drafted. That's the key, is that you have to talk about players who weren't drafted.
Oh, I will argue, Jed, he's Cordero Patterson.
Well, that's the thing, though. But Cordero Patterson was drafted in some leagues. You just got to see what their draft position was.
Yeah, no one knew. Who is it? Schefter, Adam Schefter from ESPN is the one taking credit for identifying Elijah Mitchell as the breakout candidate. But honestly, no one knew who Mitchell was. I think he was on the waivers the first couple of weeks. He had maybe that really good game that second week, and that's when he came on. And when people started adding him, I think Tommy added him in a bunch of leagues early on. But yeah,
I think a lot of times Elijah Mitchell, is he on my team for the keeper league, or do you guys have one?
I'll check, but I remember you added him on a bunch of leagues.
Yeah. Hey, look, we thought Trey Sermon was going to do well, but Elijah Mitchell's come. While Jimmy's looking at Jed, DeAndre Swift, Thanksgiving Day game, he had a shoulder sprain. He'll probably miss this week, maybe the following week. Jamal Williams, how high is he on your priority list?
Yeah, I mean, he's up there. I mean, and again, like we were saying, he's not a guy that I do not see him in the same vein as a Swift. I don't think you can expect him to produce at the same level as Swift. But again, he's going to be the starter. And so, he's going to, they got to put those carries, they got to put those drop down passes somewhere. And so that's definitely someone to potentially target.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, Jared Goff does not give me any confidence at all. We think the Bears are bad. The Detroit Lions are pretty bad.
Well, the fact that the Bears could win that game proves that. No, I mean, I think you knew, even in LA, I mean, if you watch those games, he just could not handle passes beyond, 10, 15, 20 yards. He couldn't handle the deep ball, and he just was not that accurate. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I think Hawkinson is a guy who has really been hurt. Like, he has not had as much production as we've hoped this year. Swift has been pretty good. They've had to really focus on him. So, we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for Los Angeles, think about it. They dumped Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford, and that was a great decision for him, because he's the one who can get that ball to those receivers downfield. And you can see how even Beckham really benefited from having Stafford as quarterback.
Yeah. One little thing about Stafford is a lot of times the reports have him. He has hurt his neck. He has hurt his elbow. He hurts his back. And so everything is pain. But he did do he continues to throw interceptions. That's the concern with Matthew Stafford. He throws a lot of interceptions. This is his third interception in the last 3 games. But he's throwing a lot of yardage in that long 50-something yard pass over to Beckham was pretty good.
Well, and also like Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson could have had 2 long touchdowns for the day. Yeah. One got called back for a penalty, but that's actually, I mean, outside of Beckham did great, but Van Jefferson's somebody who, from a dynasty perspective, I would really look at him as a keeper for long term. Yeah.
On a side note, remember the draft where I missed it and I'm playing with the bunch of guys from Japan, and that draft where I did auto draft ended up giving me Cooper Cup, Matthew Stafford, Jonathan Taylor. It has gone pretty well for that league.
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, a lot of times auto draft can do better than yourself if you just let it get your.
Are you Tom? Are you at least number 1 in that league?
No. I was. It took a while for some of those guys to start. Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin really struggled. So I'm probably in 4th place right now. At one point, I was in 8th place.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, Ezekiel Elliott. Somebody offered me Najee Harris for Ezekiel Elliott. He's been playing through an injured right knee since early October. What do you think of him and Tony Pollard in this game? I mean, Tony Pollard did pretty well in the Thanksgiving game.
Yeah, actually, I was really happy that Tony Pollard did so well. I mean, if you notice, Elliott didn't play in a lot of snaps, especially towards the end of the game, and it was Pollard who they primarily went to during a bulk of those carries as well as also those runs. I still think that Elliott's nicked up. My guess, I mean, we keep talking about this. I can see them moving on from Elliott next year, figuring out how to cut ties because Pollard's actually a pretty good running back. And going back to that trade, I wouldn't make that trade. I mean, especially if it's a dynasty league. But Harris hasn't done as well either. He only had 4 fantasy points this past week. You know, in the last four games, he hasn't reached 20 points in terms of fantasy. So he's struggling as well too. But he's still clearly better than Ezekiel Elliott in my eyes.
Wait, so that means you would do the trade though, right? Because then he would be getting Harris and right because you have Elliott.
Do you have Elliott?
No, I'd be giving up Harris.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I wouldn't give up Harris.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Hey, Jed, I've been seeing at least in a couple of our leagues, people have been dropping Amari Cooper. And with CD Lamb still struggling, he'll probably be back this week. Look, Michael Gallup had 5 catches, 106 yards. Cedric Wilson had 7 catches, 104 yards. Who's the wide receiver to own for you?
Well, I have Gallup, and I picked him over Wilson just because when I watch the games, I think Wilson has the better talent. Like he wins the one-on-one battles, but he has worse hands. He drops the ball.
Gallup gets everything.
Exactly. Yeah. The ball's thrown to Gallup.
Catches everything that's thrown to him.
Yep, exactly. And he's the kind of the deep ball guy, whereas Wilson catches more stuff over the middle. So I like Gallup better. I think he's more of the home run hitter there too. But you know, if you're in a PPR league, then I would pick Cedric Wilson because he gets a lot more of those kind of small to short yardage catches.
But I think you might want to double check, Tom. I think Cooper's out another week because of COVID. He got injured, and I think now he's on the COVID list. So I think that he's going to be out one more week. So that means you're going to have Gallup and CD Lamb as the primary 2 receivers. And then Wilson was actually kept out of practice yesterday. So he got nicked up during the game. So I still think Gallup's going to be the better play this week.
Jim, on the other side of that game, the Las Vegas Raiders, look, Waller avoided major knee injury. He is considered week to week, and he suffered what they call a strained IT band. But with him out, look at Hunter Renfrow, 8 catches, 134 yards. Wow, Hunter Renfrow, we were talking about Brian Edwards. We were talking about Deshaun Jackson. Hunter Renfrow has been doing so well in the last couple of weeks. He's gotten 134 yards. Now, at the same time, last week he did get 30 yards, but this week he did really well.
Yeah, Renfrow's a good player. I think the other player, if you need a tight end to replace Waller, Morneau, who's the backup tight end, I think the last time he had a touchdown, he had close to about 15 fantasy points. He would be actually a pretty good fill-in for Waller. Hopefully Waller is only out for one game because I need him for the playoffs.
Okay, just so you know, it doesn't matter. I don't think a lot of people are going to pick him up. Dan Arnold suffered an MCL sprain and will probably miss 4 to 6 weeks. And so that's it. A couple of things as we talk about look into week 13. Here are the teams that are on bye. You have 4 teams on bye. You have the Titans. You have the Panthers, you have the Browns, and you have the Packers. That's 4 teams on bye. So people are going to sit there on the waiver wires, and people like myself, Tommy Lee, in one of our leagues, I ran out moves, so I can't make any more moves this week.
Well, that's what I was going to say. How the heck are you going to make any – oh, you're going to have to just go through trades, right? Because there's no way you can pick up any of these players right now.
Like in our keeper league, I have Aaron Rodgers starting. Well, he's on bye. So unless somebody's willing to trade me a quarterback or something like that, I'm stuck with no quarterback this week playing.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
That's such a bad. I don't know how do you got to. I'm trying to think of how many moves. How many moves are you at, Jimmy?
I mean 30 something, but 50. Yeah. Did you just forget there was 50 moves?
Look, I had so many injuries. I was trying to get out of the hole. Remember, I was stuck in ninth place, 10th place for the longest time. So I
Yeah.
kept making moves all the time to get. I finally got myself to eighth and maybe seventh place at the same time. But our playoffs are the top 6 teams.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just looking at your team right now. Your team's actually not that bad, because
That's
you got
because I made
Mooney
50
now.
moves.
Yeah, you got Mooney now. You got Madison. You got Gronk. You got Ayuk. Yeah, it's actually not a bad team. You just have no quarterback this week, so
Yeah.
most likely you're going to lose.
No, but if you look at it, I'm slated to win still. Well, let's see what happens. The other guys haven't made his move as well too.
Yeah.
Tommy, I'll trade you Burrow. You can find some. We'll find something to work out. I've got Burrow sitting on the bench.
Look, I'm going to be scanning and making trades because I have Mooney. That I have a whole bunch of guys, Gronk, all these guys that are there. Yeah. All right. Waiver wire picks, Jim.
Oh yeah.
Who are some of the guys that you're looking at for this week?
I mean, we talked about it. Renfro will be somebody who I think we're all looking at. Jamal Williams, backup running back. We don't know how long Swift is going to be out for. I actually think that he's going to be a good fill-in. He had 10 fantasy points this week. He had 15 rushes for 65 yards. I wouldn't say he's not an A.J. Dillon or a Madison, to be honest, but he would be a good fill-in. Funny enough, did you know that Alexander Madison is available in 80% of the ESPN leagues? I actually didn't know that he was still out there. I mean, if he's out there, he's for sure the number one person that you're going to have to go after. And then the other people that you should really think about, right? Chuba Hubbard, I think we talked about him.
No.
He's okay.
Terrible.
He's okay. I mean, for people who have no running back, like I have no running backs in a couple of leagues, I'm going to have to go after him. Bart Scott, I think Bart Scott was better at running this past week than Miles Sanders. Unfortunately, both of them had a fumble, and so I think that's the reason why Bart Scott may not be your number one running back, but he clearly ran the ball better. And he actually, I mean, if you look at it, he actually had about 12 fantasy points, so that's not bad. Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne actually did really well. He had 20 fantasy points for New England this past week. He had 6 receptions, 61 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So he's actually come on quite a bit for New England. So those
Jim, you're missing the 2 most famous hot priority ones for me.
Who? Wait, say that again?
Dontrell Hilliard from the Tennessee Titans.
Oh yeah, but he's not playing this week.
Oh yeah, but still,
Yeah.
man, I'm willing to after Madison, if he's sitting there, I'm taking Dontrell Hilliard.
Really, but he had a fumble. You really would still go after him? Because I was like, I don't know about him. I just feel like he's kind of like a 1 week wonder. I mean, he had over 100 yards, but he had a fumble. So I don't know. People, some of these running backs that's always fumbling, I don't really look at too much.
But at the same time, if you would sit there and pay attention, one of the things they were saying on the broadcast is he's very patient. He's very shifty. And so I like that as well, too, versus trying to run like Gus Edwards. He just tries to run through everyone. Dontrell Hilliard had a lot of shifty moves, and he was very patient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they've got that other running back, too, right? So both of them had 100 yards. So don't you think the other running back's going to take away chances from him?
Deontay Foreman, yeah, he had 19 carries, 109 yards.
Yeah.
Hey,
I actually
Jed,
like better.
Jed, who's your number one waiver wire pick this week?
Yeah, I was just looking. You're right about Madison. When you said that, I was looking to see what leagues were. None of the leagues I'm in, Madison is available. So and yeah, I don't like
80% of ESPN leagues there, Jed.
I don't like using ESPN, actually. That's why I'm a big Yahoo loyalist when it comes to fantasy. I'm in one league in ESPN and I hate it. It's like so awkward to use. Yeah, I mean, I think Madison is definitely number one. I mean, I like Hillard. I was just looking, though, at who is Tennessee playing next. That's my concern, is the Titans have been really they're just in a downfall. And so I'm worried about who they're playing and kind of what is the matchup. I think, especially, again, if you're like me and you have to have a win you got to look at the matchups. I think the matchups play a big role in whether or not these second stringers can come in and do well. So, but are they Titans off next week? I don't even see them.
Yep, the Titans are off this week.
Oh, that's the problem. Yeah, so I can't waste a pickup on him.
Yeah. So, okay, let me ask you guys something. Would you guys consider, if you need a quarterback, Taysom Hill, who most likely will become the starter? And he did do well last year. He averaged, close to 20 fantasy points when he was the quarterback last year.
I mean, yeah, I think if you are desperate, like if you're a Tommy situation, then you need a quarterback. That wouldn't be a bad move. You hope he catches lightning in a bottle. And a lot of times, the first time a guy comes out, teams, they know they have tape on him, but still he might be able to kind of catch them a little bit by surprise. But if you watched him last year, he was basically Tim Tebow 2.0, right? Like a little bit better, but still just not a clear pocket passer. And teams know that. And so then they can scheme for it. I guess I'd be willing to take a shot just because, like you said, he could catch lightning in a bottle. But again, I would look closely at matchups. I think that's probably the biggest thing is to see who are the Saints playing next week.
Yeah,
they're playing the Cowboys. Oh, so see, that's a really good. Yeah, I would do it for sure because that's going to be a high scoring game. And so you could potentially get a lot of points there.
Tom, that's how you can get a quarterback. You can go to somebody and say, look, I'll give you, I don't know, this player, maybe not that good a player, and say, I'll trade you if you can pick up Taysom Hill for me.
Yeah, and then trade him to me. Yeah.
No, or more so, I think a lot of times I scan the leagues to see who has two quarterbacks. And then from that point on, I give them an okay player as well, too, because, hey, at this age, who's going to play one of those quarterbacks? You just want to get rid of them for something else. And usually the last place teams, the problem with the last place teams is they've stopped caring or they stop paying attention. So it's hit and miss with these last place teams.
Yeah, Tommy, I need a running back. If you offer me a running back for Burrow, that'll work. And then I'll start.
I could have offered you a bunch of running backs. Unfortunately, I gave it to Tommy and then all of a sudden I got Christian McCaffrey out, and I was not in a happy mood on Sunday when I saw that. I was so upset.
Now, Jen, I have a dilemma. Do I play Antonio Gibson? Do I play Alexander Madison? Do I play Ramondre Stevenson? Do I play? So I have a lot of people to play at this point right now. Mm-hmm. Javonte Williams is another one I got. So
wait, okay. Yeah. Is Javonte? I have not seen the news. You were the one who said Gordon is injured. Is that true, or was I know he was out for a little bit? Do you know he's going to be out for a while?
He did come back to the game later on in the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll trade you Madison for Burrow. I'd take that.
Well, I mean, here's the only reason I'm intrigued. The only thing is I have Aaron Rodgers, right? So essentially, I just need a 1 week player. But at the same time, Alexander Madison will probably be a 2 week player. So I don't know. I'll think about this.
No, I mean, actually, going back to that actually might be a decent player. Like, it's a dynasty league. You got Madison really for 2 weeks, right? Now, Jets got him for 2 weeks. You could potentially have a long-term number one quarterback because you have Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to keep Aaron Rodgers for next year. I mean, that actually might be, from a dynasty perspective, a pretty decent trade. But you're also losing Alexander Madison's points for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. So I will think through some of those things as well, too, man. Hey, by the way, the three stud wide receivers, the rookie draft picks, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and who's the other one? Devontae
Smith. Devontae Smith.
Is it Freeman or I forgot? Smith. They've been doing really, really well.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle had a great game this past weekend. I was just looking at that in Miami. So, yeah, it's been impressive to see, the rookie wide receivers. Again, historically, rookie wide receivers do not do that well. It usually takes them to at least the second year, and especially the third year is when you see a big jump in wide receiver production. But, man, all three of those guys have produced those this year, and I was one that missed out on Jamar Chase. I kind of doubted that would work, and it has looked really good there. So, as far as a dynasty perspective, all three of those guys are definitely keepers.
Off the cuff, right? I'm sitting here. Side note, baseball. Javi Baez just signed a contract with the Detroit Tigers. People thought he might come back for the Cubs. He just signed a huge contract with the Detroit Tigers. So
Another
in baseball,
former Cub.
yep, you're going to see all of these different players trying to sign right now before the CBA lockout, because a lot of times no one knows what's going to happen. So suddenly you're going to see a lot of movement. The one player that the White Sox are targeting, ideally either Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, or Anthony Rizzo. But a lot of times the concern is Anthony Rizzo is too injury prone. They really, really want Kyle Schwarber because he could play first base. From that point on, he could play left field. He could DH. That would be, and he had 35 home runs last year.
Yeah, Castellanos is actually a pretty decent player. I was surprised that they let him go. The Cubs let him go after. I mean, he comes pretty cheap. He won't be cheap this year.
No.
So funny story. I had a former coworker who was girlfriends with Kyle Schwarber's girlfriend. I don't know if they're now married at the time, but she was saying how like his rookie year, the guy was like a huge like party drinker guy. She was saying like on the weekends he was just always blasted, but said that he was a really nice guy, but he was a heavy drinker.
Yeah.
And it looks like a lot of times he's lost weight. He's been more disciplined, and he's not as injury prone like he was with the Cubs, and probably sometimes a new change of scenery. He did really, really well with Boston when the Cubs non-tendered him. And so suddenly now he's a free agent and he's going to get a huge offer from one of the teams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even I remember reading a Sports Illustrated article, and he did say early on in his early days of playing for the Cubs, he was young. He wasn't really sure how to take care of his body. He wasn't really sure what he was doing. And it took him to leave Chicago for him to mature. I mean, he's one of those players I think the Cubs are going to look back one day and regret letting go. But at the same time, I can see him saying he needed to get out of there in order for him to grow as a player.
Yeah, a lot of these players, that's the thing. You forget they're 18, 19, 20 years old. I mean, we were all stupid when we were that age, right? So it takes a long time to figure out how to do it.
Okay, I mean, going back to football, like even yesterday, I was watching Monday Night Football, right? And Russell Wilson seems like he's been in the league forever, which I think he had. But you know, he's only 33 years old. And so when I looked at that, I was like, whoa, he's only 33 years old. I mean, if you put that into perspective, he's still relatively young compared to where we are.
Yeah. Hey, a couple of games before we wrap up here. Jim, let me actually go over you. I want to look at the Atlanta Falcons game with all of what's so many buys this week. Russell Gage, is he on your radar? 6 catches, 62 yards, 1 touchdown. Look, I mean, there really is no wide receivers unless you're hoping Calvin Ridley comes back here in the next couple of weeks, and don't hold your breath on that. Is Russell Gage someone that you're looking at?
I don't think so. I mean, I there's a couple of receivers that I like better than Russell Gage, right? I think with Ridley, I was hoping that he would come back in time for the playoffs. But even the owner came out this past week or maybe a week and a half ago and says there's no timetable whatsoever with Ridley, and we're just going to let him take his time. So with that said, for me, here's a couple of things, right? If Russell Gage is out there, he's not worth it. You've got Van Jefferson, you've got Renfro, you got Bateman. All those players are people I'd much rather take. Even I know you don't like him anymore. Even a Kenny Galladay, is actually I think a better play than a Russell Gage. Partly just because Cordell Patterson is your number one person. They're focused on right now.
Jed, Zach Wilson came back as a starter. Look, 145 yards. But at the same time, we're looking at the rushing attack. With Michael Carter gone, we're looking at, was it Tevin Coleman or Ty Johnson? Ty Johnson had 6 carries for 42 yards. But Tevin Coleman, 16 carries, 67 yards. Is he somebody you're looking at this week?
No, I was just going to say that. I think you can look to the Jets for some points, but not at the running back position. I feel like maybe at the wide receiver position. I was just trying to see what the stats were from last game. But no, I mean, I feel like that was a backfield I looked at, but I shied away from again because it's the Jets. I just feel like they're going to be always coming from behind. So the run game is something that they have to shy away from. They're playing the Eagles next week. And so the Eagles are coming back from a loss. So I expect the Eagles to win that one. I don't know if the Jets rushing game is someplace that I would go. I think I'd be leaning more towards their passing game.
I was reading, funny enough, with the Jets. So Zach Wilson was the number 2 quarterback that was drafted. The New York papers, New York social media is now clamoring for Joe Flacco to come back as the quarterback because they said all their players are better when Flacco is at the helm. But he's been disappointing. Actually, a lot of the quarterbacks.
Flacco's old.
Yeah.
Flacco's so old.
Flacco knows how to manage the game, I mean, think about it. He at least knows how to get the ball to the right players and not lose these games. Where Zach Wilson, I don't know, he had a bad game this past week.
Yeah. Jim, a couple more teams I want to look at. Cincinnati Bengals. Look, Joe Burrow, we talked about Jamar Chase, but Joe Mixon, 165 yards. But the one person is T. Higgins. Suddenly I see all these people making trade offers for T. Higgins in one of my other leagues, but he's inconsistent. He had 114 yards this week. But before that, he had 15 yards the week before, 78 yards, 97 yards. Yeah. T. Higgins, I mean, was 114 a fluke because of Jamar Chase having a bad game, or what do you think about T. Higgins?
I don't know. I mean, I was thinking about that when we were talking about Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and Jamar Chase. It is usually around this time that some of the rookies start declining after having a really good first half. And part of it is just they're not used to playing these 16, 17-game seasons. So they're just going to start hitting this rookie wall. And so I actually think that maybe trying to go after T. Higgins is actually kind of smart because Jamar Chase has not had a good game fantasy-wise the last few weeks. So I don't know. I mean, time will tell, but I actually wouldn't mind going after T. Higgins.
Jed, last team I want to talk about is the LA Chargers versus Denver Broncos. Look, the Denver Broncos won 28-13 against the Chargers, but it was not because of anything the offense did. Besides Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon did get 17 carries, 83 yards. But look at the wide receivers. Tim Patrick, 2 catches. Jerry Jeudy, 2 catches. Sutton, 2 catches. They were terrible. And on the Chargers end, nothing. Eckler had 12 carries, 31 yards. Keenan Allen, 7 catches. Mike Williams, 4 catches. One, what do you think of the LA Chargers? And then also Denver, do we just dump all of the wide receivers over in Denver?
Yeah, I was disappointed. I had Jerry Jeudy, so I was hoping for some points there. No, I don't think I think both defenses played well. I expect both teams to bounce back. So the Chargers are playing Chargers are playing the Bengals, so I expect that to be some good points. I was disappointed. I continue to be disappointed in Mike Williams. He's so hit or miss, but I expect the Chargers to put up some points, that to be a high-scoring game against the Bengals. So I still think you can play a Mike Williams. You can still play your Austin Eckler. And then the Broncos are playing the Chiefs. And again, that's a divisional game, a big game. So I expect a little bit more offense, but I think you probably have to temper your with the wide receivers in Denver. I think, it's spread out. So there's not a clear number one. And then 2, they're really going to have to focus on the run game.
Okay. So let me throw you this scenario, right? 10-team playoffs, the top 10-team league. Top 6 teams get in. You're number 7, and you have to win this game. Are you playing Jerry Jeudy? You're definitely not playing Sutton. Are you playing Jerry Jeudy as your flex player?
Probably not. We talked about like a Michael Gallup or Cedric Wilson. I'm looking for other matchups where I'm expecting a lot of points. I like that Bengals-Chargers game. I think you can expect a lot of points there. So I would maybe look to that game. I like the Cowboys-Saints game. So again, we talked about the Saints. With Taysom Hill coming in, you might want to think about who is Hill going to pass to. Who's going to be the recipient of Taysom Hill coming in, and maybe try to get some of your points there.
Yeah. The other thing, at least going back to the Chargers Broncos game, the Chargers. Chargers, Chargers Bengals game. If you've noticed, Justin Herbert every other game is where he does well. So this past week he did not do well. I am expecting him. I mean, he's going to have to throw it, right? So just as long as he's not making any turnovers, that's great. I do think if you go back to the Broncos versus Chiefs game, remember, the way to defeat the Chiefs is to not let Patrick Mahomes get the ball. So I do see them using Gordon and Williams a lot. So I think from a fantasy perspective, if Williams is out, if you have Williams on your bench, he actually would be a good play this week because I think they're going to feed him the ball, is my thought.
Hey, one last thing in regards to the Cowboys-Saints games. 7 coaches on the Dallas Cowboys will not be on the sidelines because of COVID, including their head coach. And so they're playing this Thursday night game. Ezekiel Elliott is injured and all that stuff. You're gonna have to hope Dak Prescott does a really, really good job in terms of throwing the ball.
Yeah, I expect Tony Pollard. I expect Schultz to have good games coming out of there. So that's where I would look. The other I was going to just quickly mention the other game, the 49ers and the Seahawks. We talked about Brandon Ayuk. I think it would be an excellent pickup for that game.
Yeah.
Seahawks' defense has been really suspect, so I think he can get a lot of points.
Yeah. Hey, last thing before we wrap up here, NBA basketball. I was very disappointed. Ja Morant, he escaped a very, very scary knee injury, but he has a knee sprain, but will be out for a while.
Yeah, he's such a amazing player. I love watching Ja Morant. He's to me, he really it's debatable between him and Zion. If he should have been number one, it's really debatable.